All right, and we back on the forecast. Now, if we haven't learned by now, we have to understand that we cannot destroy the system from within the system. You can't change the system. It has to be destroyed. This system was built off of our destruction, and you cannot take out the roots without taking out the whole thing. And some of us call ourselves having allies, but the quote-unquote white liberal, they don't want this system destroyed. At the end of the day, they know this system protects them. They know it benefits them. We have to understand a lot of them have the mindset of, if we ever get in position, we're going to do to them what they did to us. They judge everybody off of their sick mentality. And some of us think, well, maybe if I get in good with them, then I'll be good. All you have to do is just do what they say, and they won't bother you. But not only do they want to keep you as a second-class citizen, they're still going to bother you anyway, anytime they feel like it. But we run around here still trying to uphold their system, enforce their rules meant to destroy us, instead of having faith in ourselves to create our own societies, create our own rules, our own laws. But when we finally realize and catch on that doing the same things over and over again is going to get us the same results over and over again, then we'll be ready to make something happen. But as long as we keep trying to appropriate into the system, we're going to keep a system of destruction alive. One of the bloodiest riots of 1967 happened in Detroit during the Detroit Rebellion. And it started after the police raided a black bar, which they labeled communist, but really black organizations met there. And on a particular night that the police raided it, they were just having a party for 2 black soldiers that came home from the Vietnam War. Now, the police ended up arresting about 85 people, everybody who was inside there. And as they were being loaded on paddy wagons, a crowd started to form and they were watching the whole thing. And by the time the last people were taken away, somebody in the crowd threw a brick. And then more people started throwing bricks and bottles and rocks. And after a window in the cop car was busted out, the police took off. So then the crowd started turning their attention to all white businesses. And black business owners put signs in the windows so their businesses won't be destroyed because they were only going after white businesses. Now, again, the mistake that they made was not replacing white businesses with more black businesses and then not allowing others back into their community to take their money, especially when they don't spend their money with us. And then about 4 hours after the police raid, the crowd had got up to around 3,000 people. And they were still throwing bricks, rocks, and bottles, so the police sealed off the area. By about 10 o'clock that morning, the crowd was at about 8,000. And firefighters were called in to put out fires, but people started throwing rocks and bottles at the firefighters. Eventually, the mayor had to ask for help from the state police, and they called in the National Guard, and then tried to impose a curfew from 9 at night to 5 in the morning. But within 7 minutes of the first curfew, a black 16-year-old boy was shot and killed by the police. In that first night alone, 5 people were killed and hundreds were injured. In the black community, fed up with the brutality, some people started sniping at the police and firefighters. By 2 o'clock in the morning, 800 state police and 8,000 National Guards were called in. And they didn't ask any questions. They just started shooting at the looters. Then by midnight, as more and more people were being killed, the governor declared a state of emergency. And the president, LBJ, used the Insurrection Act of 1807, which was made for rebellious slaves, really for Haiti, to send in another 4,700 paratroopers, making Detroit the only city occupied by federal troops at least 3 times. And the police violated so many rights, searching people's homes and vehicles without permission, and just committing brutality against everybody, men, women, and children. One of the most known incidents during the riot happened at the Algiers Motel, which that movie Detroit was about. In that one incident, the police ended up killing 3 black men, Carl Cooper, Aubrey Pollard, and Fred Temple. And the only one ever charged for it was the one black security guard who tried to be involved. But by the end of the rebellion, at least 10,000 people participated and another 100,000 people watched. 43 people ended up getting killed, 33 of them were black, and at least 23 black people were killed by the police or the National Guard. 1,189 people were reported injured, and over 7,200 people were arrested. And most of the people arrested, of course, were black. And the oldest was 82, and the youngest was 4 years old. The police arrested a 4-year-old. And black cops helping enforce the system designed to destroy them were also targeted and shot at by the police, even in uniform. But still, we're the first one to die for American values. The first one to die for white supremacy, even though we're the biggest victims of it. In every war, we fight them in order to be able to fight for them. But we need to figure out how to channel that energy for ourselves. Because if we fight for this country, then we should be able to fight for our own freedom. In Prince George County, Maryland, a brother, William Greene, was shot and killed by police while he was already handcuffed sitting in the police car. Now let's see how a brother already handcuffed and in the front seat of a police car, strapped in with a seatbelt, end up getting shot and killed by the police.
A police officer shot and killed a handcuffed man sitting inside of his own cruiser. This happened around 8 last night at St. Barnabas Road and Winston Street in Temple Hills. Michael Quander is there. And Michael, what have you learned?
Yeah, police tell us that suspect was handcuffed with his hands behind his back, strapped to a seatbelt in the front passenger seat of that police car. Now, take a look at this video. So far, here's what we know. This all happened around 8 p.m. last night when someone called 911 saying a driver hit multiple cars on St. Barnabas Road. Now, officers caught up to him and believe they smelled the drug PCP and put him under arrest. Now, again, that suspect was cuffed with his hands behind his back in that police cruiser with a seatbelt on. An officer got into the driver's seat. That's when investigators say 2 separate witnesses say that they saw or heard some sort of struggle happening before that officer shot and killed the suspect inside of that car. Now, since the news broke last night, one of the biggest questions people are asking is why with a suspect in the front seat of that police car, officers say that that was business as normal. That is how they transport suspects to go to jail.
Police have not said exactly what time. Police Chief Hank Stawinski says it appeared William Greene was involved in multiple collisions as he drove through the intersection of St. Barnabas Road and Winston Street. Police say Corporal Michael Owen and another officer were called to an address in the 5000 block of Winston Street. According to charging documents, a witness told the 2 officers that Greene was asleep in his car. Police say Owen and the other officer saw Greene asleep. A spokesperson initially said the officers thought Greene's car smelled of PCP. Chief Stawinski later retracted that claim to clarify that Greene was not on PCP. Police say Corporal Owen handcuffed Greene behind his back and put him in the front seat of his police cruiser. Police say the other officer heard gunshots about 5 to 10 minutes later, and were told that officer went back to the cruiser and found Greene still handcuffed in the car with gunshot wounds.
Now, it started after somebody called 911 after they saw this brother bumping into cars. Now, when the police got there, they said they thought they smelled PCP. But this brother could have been having a medical condition or anything. So when the police approached him, they said this brother was in the car asleep. So they arrested this brother and called in the drug unit. So they put this brother William Greene in handcuffs and sat him in the front seat of the cop car and even put the seatbelt on him while they were using a police dog to search his car for drugs. Then somehow this brother in handcuffs, strapped in the front seat of a police car, ended up getting into an altercation with the cop Michael Owen, who was black. Now, witnesses, and they call other cops witnesses, said they heard loud bangs while they were struggling in the police car. And then they heard gunshots go off. And when they ran over there, they saw this brother William Greene still in handcuffs, still in the seatbelt in the front seat of the car, but he had been shot and killed. Now, of course, this cop Michael Owen didn't have a body camera and he was put on paid vacation. But we already know about the blue wall of silence, and we know these cops are going to stay on code as they usually do, right?
A short time ago here in Prince George's County District Court Judge Robert Heffron said the accusation that police officer Michael Owen fired into a handcuffed unarmed man 7 times makes him a threat to public safety, especially since if Owen were released on bail, he might have access to guns in the home he shares with another active duty officer. Heffron denied bail to the accused police officer, who's currently in jail. The large family of shooting victim William Greene gasped and let out a muted clap, one family member blurting out, "Thank God." The family did not speak with reporters as they left the courthouse. According to testimony in court, Greene hit a number of cars while driving on St. Barnabas Road Monday evening. A bystander blocked Greene's vehicle after he stopped. Owen and another officer found Greene asleep and unresponsive behind the wheel, arrested him, handcuffed him, and put him in the front seat of Owen's police car. 5 to 10 minutes later, the other police officer reported hearing gunshots, ran to Owen's car, and found Greene, quote, still seated and handcuffed behind his back in the passenger seat, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds, charging documents said. The victim was absolutely no threat to him, said prosecutor Renee Joy. When paramedics arrived, he was still handcuffed behind his back, the statement of charges said. Greene had no weapons, according to the documents. So Officer Owen stays in jail for now, and meanwhile, scrutiny of his career accelerates. Prosecutors told me they will now review a 2011 shooting in Palmer Park where Owen shot and killed Rodney D. Edwards, a man accused of pointing a loaded gun at Owen. A second look at the case has been launched at the request of Edwards' family.
So now as a black cop, they didn't waste any time and immediately charged him. The police came out and said they didn't believe PCP was involved at all. They said they didn't find any weapons. They even said they didn't even find evidence that the cop had got into a fight with him. And this is the first time I've ever heard the police deny somebody got into a fight with them. Now, if only they could do these kind of investigations in other cases, because in this case, instead of looking into the person that was murdered background, this time, for some reason, they're going to look into this cop's background and bring up everything that he ever did. A judge even called him a threat to public safety and said he shouldn't even be released with an ankle monitor. And you see how fast the police responded in this case. They came out and condemned him immediately. But now I wonder what the difference is in this case.
Police in Prince George's County, Maryland, say one of their officers responded to 911 calls last night that reported a driver hit several cars in suburban Washington, D.C. The apparent driver was arrested, as this cell phone video shows. Police say he was handcuffed and put into the front seat of a police car with a seatbelt fastened. Both the officer and the suspect were African American. What happened next is now under investigation. Police say the two got into some kind of struggle inside the car, and the man, still wearing handcuffs, was shot several times. He died at the hospital. Relatives identify the man as William Greene. His fiancée wants to know how he could have been a threat.
When your hands is behind your back in cuffs and you strap down, you move, handcuffs get tighter and tighter.
Late Tuesday, prosecutors filed a slate of charges against the officer.
I have directed our Special Investigations Response Team to charge Corporal Michael Owen with second-degree murder, manslaughter, and associated weapons charges.
Greene's fiancée still wants answers.
I'm hurt. I loved him. He was loved. He didn't deserve that.
Now, usually cops are rarely charged, and when they are, it takes months to even years to even see them get charged. But this black cop, Michael Owens, found out real quick he's not a part of the club. They'll throw you under the bus quick. And he thought he was a part of the blue wall of silence. But it's not designed for us. It was never meant for us. So many of us had to fight to death for people like him to be that much a part of it. And they hit this black cop with a list of charges, including murder and manslaughter. But to condemn this black cop is to show their hypocrisy. But they show it all the time because this is what they do. Now, if you're going to be a black cop, you might as well do it for something that is going to benefit you, something that will protect you. If we're going to fight, we might as well fight to build our own system. We might as well fight for our own freedom. Because at the end of the day, we are all we got, and there's no other way around it. And until we realize that and get on code, then we're going to continue to get the same results.
In 100 places, Detroit is afire. 100 square blocks are now under siege. And as you walk through the area, people shout from their homes, "Watch out for the snipers."
It began early one Sunday morning in late July. Police raided an unlicensed bar in a black neighborhood in Detroit. A crowd gathered. Tempers flared.
This is going to happen all over America. It's going to be a hot world, not a hot summer. It's a hot world.
A rock was thrown, and the city became a war zone.
Several hundred rounds squeezed off. Now all of a sudden it's silent. Tense quiet, everybody looking around.
The fires burned for 5 days.
You were patrolling the streets of Detroit in the midst of all of this mayhem.
It was unbelievable mayhem.
In 1967, Ike McKinnon was one of only 100 black police officers on a force of 5,500 in Detroit.
I said, my God, this is happening to my city.
The fire has been raging for more than 30 minutes. The people have been evacuated, and yet the firemen are unable to respond.
Black Detroiters in particular were routinely singled out for abuse, for excessive profiling, arrests, really an overall criminalization of black Detroiters that white Detroiters simply didn't experience.
God damn it.
Policing was used to, keep white neighborhoods white.
Growing up, Ike McKinnon had seen many young black men singled out for abuse at the hands of the police. He was one of them.
I was 14 years old, and I was beaten up by 4 police officers. They grabbed me, the name calling, they proceeded to beat me up.
Was this standard operating procedure?
This was SOP for these guys. That evening, I made a decision. I was going to become a Detroit police officer. I wanted to make sure that those kinds of things didn't happen to me or to other people.
But driving home in 1967 after a long night patrolling Detroit's burning streets, McKinnon's badge and blue uniform offered no protection.
2 white officers pulled me over with their guns drawn. And I said, police officer, and smiling as I am now, I said, police officer. I had my badge. I stepped out of the car. The older officer with his gun drawn, he said, tonight you're gonna die, nigger.
This is a cop.
This is a police officer.
Telling another police officer,
yes.
I'm gonna kill you.
That's right. He said, tonight you're gonna die, nigger. I see his finger pulling the trigger. And as I dove back into my car, he started shooting at me. I hit the accelerator with my right hand, the steering wheel with my left hand, and I drove off as he was shooting at me.
What did that tell you?
If a person is of that mindset to me, a fellow officer, what the hell is he going to do to the rest of the people in our city?
43 people died during those 5 days in Detroit. More than 1,000 were injured. 2,000 buildings destroyed. Some 400 families left homeless.
The Webb family came back to what was their home on Harrison Street to salvage what did not burn and try to find a reason for last night's destruction.
3 teenagers, Carl Cooper, Aubrey Pollard, and Fred Temple, were among those who died, shot to death after police raided the Algiers Motel, searching for snipers.
There's a bunch of police outside right now.
What happened that night is the subject of a new film.
Let's not be stupid in this situation.
7 black men and 2 white women were severely beaten, but survived. Their stories tell a tale of brutalization and terror. John Boyega plays Melvin Dismukes, a black security guard who was also at the Algiers that night.
Fella here had a knife, tried to go for my gun.
Do you think about those young men?
I think about it constantly.
Dismukes still works as a security guard. To this day, some have not forgiven him for being the face of the law that night.
I had to move out of the city because of the threats against me. It's rough.
There were threats against you from both sides?
I wouldn't, no, I said usually just from one side.
Which was?
The black community.
Dismukes was tried for assault in 1968. He was acquitted by an all-white jury. None of the 3 white police officers at the Algiers that night were convicted of any wrongdoing.
It's every city in some respects, and that's why 67 mattered. It's why it matters that we get it right, what happened. And it's why it matters that we look at Detroit carefully today.
A small-town Georgia mayor is making national headlines today for all the wrong reasons. Thanks for staying with us at 6. I'm Sharon Reed.
Hi, everybody. I'm Thomas Roberts. She is accused of blocking the potential hire of a black man to lead the city, fearful it might upset the majority of white citizens. Chief Investigator Jonathan Carlson is the only live reporter in Houston tonight pushing for answers. And Jonathan, I know you were trying to track down the mayor. Did you find her?
Yeah, we finally did within the last hour, guys. Good evening to you. This meeting just ended somewhat chaotically. You can still see people coming out of the town hall here. The mayor was confronted about the allegations, and eventually she just got up and left. Before she went in, she told us exclusively, "I'm not prejudiced." The small city of Houston, 50 miles north of Atlanta, is without a city manager, and today, it seemed, without a mayor.
Hello.
Jonathan with CBS 46. Is the mayor around?
No, she's not.
Okay. Do you know where we can find her?
No, she has not been in the office at all today.
Teresa Kennerly is still technically the mayor, but no one at City Hall could reach her. At least that's what they said. We drove around town visiting her listed addresses and couldn't find her there either. The mayor is accused of privately telling fellow council members she pulled the resume of a black candidate for the city administrator position because she didn't feel the city was ready for a black man to lead it. One council member telling me privately today her alleged words and actions were not meant to be outwardly racist, but nonetheless, if true, she may have put the city at risk of violating civil rights laws, which protect minorities from job discrimination based on race. As words spread, so did protesters, some locals calling for her ouster.
Utter shock! I
don't live in a world that's supposed to be thinking like this. This is 2019 now.
Within just the last 30 minutes, we caught the mayor arriving for tonight's city council meeting and approached her for comment.
I can tell you that I love this town, I love the people, and I am not prejudiced.
A change in leadership for a small town that's been in the national spotlight because of racial tensions.
And this all comes after a city council member spoke out against interracial marriage. It sparked a recall campaign in the town of Houston. CBS 46's Brittany Miller is live there with more on the council member who resigned today. Brittany.
Right, and now former city councilman Jim Cleveland did not show up to the special meeting tonight. Neither did the mayor, but many people that I spoke to here were not surprised by that. They were, however, surprised by that resignation. A handwritten letter that shocked an entire city.
After 10 years of service.
Houston City Councilman Jim Cleveland unexpectedly resigning just 24 hours ago.
I, Jim Cleveland, do hereby tender my resignation.
Voters listened as the city council moved to formally accept the resignation.
I will make the motion to accept the resignation of Councilman Jim Cleveland on behalf of the citizens of Houston and every member of the city which he has offended.
Newly elected Councilman Shantuan Ashton is talking about Cleveland's reportedly racist statement that he was against interracial marriage.
And his actions offended a whole lot of people, not just people with my skin tone, but other people as well.
Cleveland allegedly made the disturbing comment while defending Houston Mayor Teresa Kennerly. She apparently pulled a resume of a black candidate for city administrator because of his race, saying the city wasn't ready for that. Local political parties asked for Cleveland and Kennerly to resign, but they refused.
We wanted this months ago. Months ago.
So neighbors started a recall campaign to force them out. That was set for next month.
We didn't expect him to resign. We expected him to get to the recall, and the people vote him out, of course.
I'm crying, I'm calling everybody. The whole plane is staring at me and wondering if you're okay, and I was just in a complete panic.
Local author and activist Ijoma Oluo was at the airport in Boston when she received a phone call from the King County Sheriff's Office about a report of gunshots at her home. She posted about the experience on social media to shine a light on what happened to her.
Nobody wants this for their kid. Nobody wants someone showing up with rifles at the door to wake their son up. And no one wants to hear that they were told there were 2 dead bodies in their house.
Immediately, she thought it was a hoax. The author of So You Want to Talk About Race says she was recently alerted she was on a website.
They had me categorized as an anti-white writer and activist. And they try to get people who are looking for someone to scare and someone to hate.
She says the website listed her address and the addresses of her family members.
And they had these emojis next to the name of the people. There were hundreds of names. And there was a gun. And if the gun showed up, it meant that they had successfully swatted that person.
Swatting. It's the kind of call that's been received here before.
I have 5 hostages in my house at the moment. I want 5 grand. I'm going to kill them all.
This is Seattle police video of officers responding to a hoax about a year ago.
Sounds more and more like swatting to me.
Consequently, they will weaponize first responders and use us as police who are there to help as a tool to harass and frighten innocent, unsuspecting individuals.
To combat those calls, Seattle police created a registry where residents concerned about swatting can let the 911 center know.
What that does is provide us here at the 911 center supplemental information to help the response.
Luckily, we had some measures in place so that the police department knew I was at risk.
She had let the sheriff's office know a few weeks ago about the swatting threat made against her. So when today's 911 call came in around 6 a.m., they knew to contact her directly, and she told them her older son was home alone.
I am so glad I had done that and that they had called me and reached me, because otherwise, you know, they would have come storming in, and who knows what could have happened.
Well, this author decided to post her experience on Twitter to make other writers and activists aware that this does happen. She also encourages them to contact their local police department if they're concerned that they could become the target of swatting.
The hardest thing about this is then tracking down the people who are doing it, because there's no clear way to catch them.
Right. Police are saying today that sometimes the people behind it spoof phone numbers. It's very difficult to catch them.
A Warren police officer pleads not guilty after investigators say that he lied about being shot. Elizabeth Noreka joining us now with more. on why the chief's plea for public forgiveness is happening. Elizabeth?
Natalie, the chief says this is a setback for his department. They have been working on building a relationship with the community and says this most recent incident is not only disgusting, but it is not what the department stands for. 23-year-old Warren police officer Noah Lennon appeared in court today. He's accused of lying about being shot after stopping to help a man with a disabled vehicle. Lennon pleaded not guilty during his arraignment today. He's charged with tampering with evidence, falsification, interrupting public service, and inducing panic. He was arrested on Tuesday. Prosecutors say on January 13th, Lennon was off duty when he first reported that he stopped to help an African-American male. Lennon claimed he was robbed and the suspect shot him in the right shoulder area. It was later determined that Lennon was not shot. Not only did close to 50 cruisers try to respond to the scene, they were also searching for suspects, even at one point detained 2 men. The chief says Officer Lennon never had any problems before, and the whole thing is upsetting. City leaders are also upset that race was injected into the incident.
I want to publicly apologize to the community. It is a huge setback from all the work that our men and women have done with the community, and we're going to move forward from this. He doesn't represent the Warren Police Department, and that's not what we stand for.
This is a national trend. When you talk about race, when you talk about these kind of issues, people are using that throughout this country. And here we're saying in Warren, Ohio, and abroad, we're not going to handle it. We're not going to accept it.
Lennon's bond was set at $10,000. The police chief says he expects the officer to be terminated by the end of the week.
It's a public place supposed to be filled with information and inclusion, but to Ashley Horace, it now represents trauma. She's a grad student studying library science through Columbia University. She's been to several libraries across the Houston area to observe song and play through story time and says she's never had a problem until now.
As soon as I got to the door, a lady stood in front of the door blocking the door, almost as if she didn't want me to come in. And I said, she said, you know, why are you here? I was like, oh, I'm here for story time.
Eventually, she got in and sat in the back of the room. A few minutes later, the same employee told Horace her manager said she had to leave.
And she said, if you don't leave now, I'm going to call the cops. And I was like, call the cops. What did I do? She said, I'm going to call them and tell them that you're trespassing.
5 West University police officers did show up. After speaking with Horace and the manager, they told her the manager has the right to ask whoever she wants to leave and said this appeared to be a misunderstanding. Here's audio from one of the officers' body cams.
She's making a big deal out of this. Sure. I didn't do anything. I didn't even get out of my chair.
That's, I'm not going to cite you or anything like that. There's no criminal violation or anything like that, okay?
In the day and age where people of color have had 911 called on them for arguably innocent reasons, Horace feels there was more to this.
I said, you know, why are you doing this? If my skin weren't brown, you wouldn't be doing this. And she kind of looked like, you know, shocked. But I knew that was the only reason. I've been in here before. I've been to the neighborhood. I've been to the library before, and that's never happened before.
According to Harris County Public Library officials, Horace was asked to leave because she didn't have a child with her during story time. Even though that's not a written policy, they do consider it a best practice because they've had incidents where people have shown up to play with other people's kids. They call it a case of miscommunication and says Horace is welcome back to story time as long as she gives advance notice. Horace says she still doesn't have a clear understanding of what happened.
I was almost shell-shocked. I was like, what is going on?
Student athletes at King Philip suspended over racial slurs against their own teammates. It is a disturbing incident, and it did not end there. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Lisa Hughes.
And I'm David Wade. Police say the teenagers then called one of the students' mother and sexually harassed her over the phone. As Shantae Land shows us, the school is taking a stand tonight against the students and this behavior.
No, that's crazy. That's crazy. I don't know what people are thinking.
Several King Philip Regional High School football players ages 14 and 15 have been suspended from school and games after school officials say they used racial slurs back on October 2nd. Rentham police say around 2 black teammates.
They pretty much came clean
explaining that, you know, they were using phrases out of popular songs that play now that use the N-word.
Police say the players also repeatedly called one of the black teammates' mothers to make inappropriate sexual comments. A school staff member told their resource officer, which prompted an investigation. Police questioned 10 students.
The investigation concluded that these kids are carelessly, recklessly using the word.
Police say no charges have been filed, but the school superintendent sent a letter home to parents, reading in part, "I want to emphasize this type of behavior is completely unacceptable and will not be tolerated in our school community. It not only violates the policies of King Philip Regional School District, it creates an unwelcoming and hostile environment for our students and families." Many parents attending a girls' soccer game say the allegations are disturbing, but hate to have the incident overshadow the success of all the sports teams.
The football team is going for the Super Bowl. They're undefeated. I just hope that that letter doesn't overshadow what a fabulous job all these kids did.
And the school has created what's called a cultural proficiency group. The goal is to help students in the district address racism.
MSU officials continue to investigate a racist note left for a student inside her campus apartment. Shatanya Clark had the chance to speak with that student today and her family. She joins us now with our top story.
Sophomore Taylor Gardner says her roommates allegedly left a note on a whiteboard that she believes was geared toward her. Upon leaving her room for her 8 a.m. class on Tuesday morning, Gardner noticed a note on the whiteboard in the living room she shared with her roommates that read, "Time to go pick some cotton," and then in parentheses, "cotton fields," a statement that has many still in shock. The photo first surfaced on social media when Taylor's older sister, Jessica Page, expressed disappointment on the alleged act of racism toward her sister. This is Taylor Gardner's first semester at MSU, but says this was not the first act of discrimination toward her by her roommates. So this was her last straw.
Once I had a Black History Month program on the refrigerator, they didn't know I was at home. I was in my room and I was hearing them in the kitchen talking about it like, "What is this?" And the next time I went into the kitchen, it was thrown away. So that kind of made me feel like they was being passive-aggressive in a way.
Some students here at MSU believe what happened to Taylor highlights a much bigger problem concerning inclusivity on campus.
Would you go that far, in my opinion, to do that to someone, especially in today's culture where it's not accepted at all?
MSU housing officials have moved Gardner in a new apartment in a different building. Now, MSU officials weren't available to talk with me on camera today, but the university is investigating what happened to Taylor. They did release a statement saying all forms of discrimination will be addressed as we work to ensure an inclusive environment for the MSU community.
Leaders at Michigan State University apologizing today for a controversial display at a school's performance center gift shop. You can take a look at the display yourself. Many are calling it racist, saying it shows historical black figures hanging from a tree. Following public outcry, the school removed the display and sent out a statement to apologize, but some students say it's just not enough.
I don't want to be constantly confronted with images and displays and, you know, these messages, like, all the time. Like, it's a painful response. It's a painful reminder.
An MSU spokesperson says that all volunteers and employees at the Wharton Center will be getting racial bias training.
It's a handful of racist letters mailed to multiple Snellville businesses. The letters say they do not want any more black businesses in the community. CBS 46's Adam Murphy joins us live. Adam, you're in the Snellville Oaks Shopping Center on Main Street. This is where some of those notes were found.
That's right, Sean. 3 businesses in this shopping center received the same letter. One of them right back here, Celeb Styles Barbershop. Needless to say, they were beyond appalled at the content.
It's a really great community.
There is a good vibe inside the Celeb Styles Barbershop on Main Street, even after the owner received an offensive letter in the mail.
After receiving that letter, man, it really broke my heart to receive that, because again, that's not who we are. We are a community-based barbershop. We're here for the people. We want to service all people. Everybody's welcome.
The same letter was sent to neighboring businesses like Gravity Trampoline Park and Burn Boot Camp. And this is what it said: to whom it may concern, we in the Snellville community want it to be known we don't want any more N-word businesses in our community. We want Gravity, Celeb Barbershop, and Boot Camp gone. Too many N-word businesses. We will not support them.
That's not a reflection of the whole city of Snellville.
Carl said the letter is offensive and heartbreaking, and whoever sent it knows nothing about them.
We've been here for about 8 months, and within the first 2 months of being here, we did a major charity event where we gave away 200 free haircuts, we gave away school supplies, we gave away 500 book bags.
Anybody who comes in here always comes back because, you know, it's just the vibe and the tone that we set and the things that we try to do for the community.
In the spirit of being charitable, because that's what we are, I would like to offer anybody who's watching this, the first 10 people that walk through the doors, I'm offering the first haircut free, the first 10 people.
Amtrak has apologized to a civil rights attorney after she said she was asked to give up her seat on a train at the start of Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. The conductor asked Sherilyn Eiffel to move, saying there were other people she wanted to give the seat to, but there were no assigned seats on the train. The company says it apologized. It's also looking into the incident.
A Homer Glen woman is now charged with a hate crime after a fight outside a banquet hall. Sarah Benain is accused of punching and yelling racial slurs at an African-American woman. The Will County Sheriff's Office says she also hit a deputy before being arrested. Her boyfriend, Lucas Harnick, was also charged with resisting arrest.
I'm looking at the journalist Felicia, and she is somebody who has gone through sexual assault herself. And she said that in the Washington Post. She released an article a couple of years ago detailing her experience. So as a journalist, which is not what we do, we are a talk show with opinion.
But you were a
journalist, and I was a journalist for 10 years prior to taking this job. So as a journalist, it's our job to objectively report the news. I know that that would be tough if you're someone who survived sexual assault. But when I'm looking at this story, she didn't give the story any context. And she got upset that she was being attacked on Twitter for tweeting a link that basically was condemning Kobe's character and accusing him of rape. But I think her job as a journalist was to put that in context. You have the responsibility and you need to have the journalistic acumen to write the full story. Go to the Washington Post and say, this man is a nuanced character. This man has a detailed, layered history that we need to discuss. But don't just tweet that out and be the political reporter for the Washington Post and tweet that and leave it there, because you're leaving yourself open to the attacks that you're now receiving. And so whether or not she should be fired, you know, I think that she should be put on leave like she was. I think it's inappropriate because we're in a time where we don't know what journalism is anymore. We have our president that attacks journalists. We have TMZ that broke the news to Vanessa Bryant that her husband passed away. You know, what are we doing now that we need to look at ourselves, people who call themselves journalists? We have journalists attacking a 7-year-old child, which is Blue Ivy, and we look at them calling out her characteristics. We need to do better altogether as journalists. And I look at this woman and I say it was your responsibility just to do better and give it more time than 2 hours after the man passes away to say what you think about him if it's negative. And, you know, don't hide behind somebody else's article. I stand behind a journalist named Jillian Sheldon. She sat at that Kobe trial for 6 weeks. She followed it in Colorado, in and out, stayed there, interviewed all the lawyers, interviewed the woman who was accusing him. And she said, how can we use someone's worst day on this earth as a referendum on their character in totality? And we can't, because just like Kobe, we all have flaws and we're all layered individuals. And we've seen this story time and time again, too many times when it's a black man and a white woman that's an accuser, when that's the story and it goes down and he just goes and gets convicted by the public jury. And we've seen the story too many times where women who have been sexually assaulted cannot give their voice to the public and are not given the space they need to share their story. So this is a complicated thing to talk about, but I really think that as a journalist, if you're going to take that name and that stance and that dignity of a position, you should probably do it properly and just try to tell the complicated story with as much care as possible. And that goes for everybody involved in this Kobe situation.
Wow.
Have some empathy for other people. You know, people lost their lives. And so we have to just step back and remember that, you know, this man was a legacy and a legend for so many people. He's also a complicated human, but we cannot just assassinate his character when he's dead and can't even defend himself. We just have to do better.
So I say this with love to the Grammys, because you really need to know this. Every year, y'all be killing us, man. Man, I'm talking about the pain. I'm speaking for all the artists here, the producers, the executives, the amount of time that it takes to make these records, to pour your heart out into it, and you just want an even playing field. In the great words of Erykah Badu, we are artists and we are sensitive about our shit. We are passionate. For most of us, this is all we got. This is our only hope. Truth be told, hip-hop has never been respected by the Grammys. Black music has never been respected by the Grammys to the point that it should be. So right now, this current situation is not a revelation. This thing been going on. And it's not just going on in music, it's going on in film, it's going on in sports, it's going on around the world. And for years, we've allowed institutions that have never had our best interests at heart to judge us. And that stops right now.